Brad Keselowski from Victory Lane at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where he won the race and ninth in the standings right now, but that doesn't matter nearly as much as that victory. The crew chief on the number 2 Miller Lite Ford joins us on the guest line now. Paul Wolfe, welcome back to the program, and I know getting that victory out of the way early has to give you guys a sense of relief in terms of what you've got coming ahead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, first of all, and yeah, that win at Vegas was was huge. I mean, I think every team's goal is, to win races early in the season, as we know that, gives you that opportunity to know you're locked into the chase and allows you the opportunity to try some different things and kind of move forward through the summer months and preparing for the chase. And so it was huge to be able to do that again this year, maybe a little earlier than last, but it was real good.
We're 5 races in, we have a break, and we've had 5 completely different style of tracks. It's easy to look back and evaluate and go, yeah, Vegas was perfect, but I know you better than that. When you look back at the last 5 races, what track do you want to be better at?
Well, I think we want to be better at all of them.
Yeah.
There's different tracks that have different characteristics, and we try to learn, take something from each track as it can help us as the season goes on, obviously. But as we look at Phoenix, we know that race is in the chase, so that's a very important one for us. So we got some information there. Then you look at Vegas, the mile-and-a-half style track, which it was good to see we had speed there. Not really, didn't really have exactly what we wanted at Fontana, the 2-mile track there with a lot of fall off, which was kind of the difference between Vegas and Fontana was, the tire combination and track surface. And that changes a lot of our approach and the setup we put in the car. So it was good to be fast at Vegas, but we need to be better at those tracks that have the high fall off, especially with Goodyear changing the tire this year at a lot of the tracks we'll go to, maybe to a softer combination to get some of that grip back that we lost from the downforce. And a lot of times that softer tire will tend to wear out faster, and understanding the setups for those types of tires is going to be very important.
I know Daytona was a little bit of a different animal, and Martinsville will be as well in terms of this new low downforce package and the softer tire you mentioned. But outside of those tracks, what have we learned here in the first few races about this package? Most people seem to be pretty happy with it, or at least that we're moving in the right direction. What about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's still a little early to tell. We've gone to Fontana, which I think over the past years has shown to put on good racing, as it did this year. Vegas, has gone both ways in the past. I think some of that depends on, the type of, temperature we get and track temp, and those things sometimes can change, the handling of the cars and what you're able to do. But overall, it seems like the cars have not been disturbed quite as much. You're able to, to get closer to guys and be able to make those passes. I think, a good example of that was if you looked at the Vegas race, when the 18 got the lead there late in that race when us and the 22 were battling. As that run went on, we were still able to race each other at the same time we were catching the leader, and I don't think we've seen that a lot in the past. And so that leader just doesn't seem to have quite the advantage maybe as he did in the past with the higher downforce. So hopefully that trend continues as the season goes on, and we'll see a lot more opportunity there to have a good handling race car, a good mechanical grip race car that can kind of keep up with the aero side of it.
We use the word downforce a lot, and a lot of our listeners, it's just a word that we put in air quotes and we just throw it around like it's free. Give our listeners an idea of when we talk about what we had last year at our maximum versus what we have now, and then your opinion, how low can we actually go on these race cars and still put a competitive race car on the track?
Well, if our aero group's done a good job, we still have just as much downforce this year as we did last year as the teams work really hard to try to get that back. Well, with the reduced rear spoiler, and we talk about the smaller splitter and rad pan. I think we were in the range of 600-700 pounds of downforce we've taken off of the car. But to go along with that, we talked about the tire and having Goodyear come up with a combination where, our top speed or fast lap is still very similar because we've traded that, 600-700 pounds of downforce, what we call aero grip for, basically mechanical grip or tire grip. So you'll see the speeds will be very similar, but we try to get the cars where, when they're in traffic and those things, they're not as sensitive, and you're always going to have that, what the drivers call the aero push or dirty air, but we feel like the more we can reduce the aero grip side of it, that won't be quite as bad. And I don't know where the limit is. Obviously, we're going to continue to work in that direction. I from what most teams have said, they're happy with that, and I think we've seen good racing. So I think NASCAR and the teams just need to continue to work together as we move forward and try to continue down this path as we like what we've seen so far.
Chatting with Paul Wolfe, who's the crew chief on the number 2 Miller Lite Ford with Brad Keselowski. And I'm assuming, Paul, that this won't manifest itself or show up as much at Martinsville as it would some other tracks. Are your notes now completely changed, or what are you expecting when you head back with this package to Martinsville for the first time?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Woody. We're not going to probably see the effects of the downforce changes at Martinsville. I mean, that's the one thing, as we've changed aero packages over the last few years. We've done it a few times here now, and it seems like Martinsville's always Martinsville, and you work on the same things every time you go there, and that's really, for one, managing your brakes and keeping your brakes on the car for that 500 laps, so you have something to race with at the end. And two is keeping, the rear tires on the car. The drive off is huge. So we haven't really seen the aero side of that affect us a whole lot. Probably the biggest change maybe was 2 years ago when we went to the no ride height rule. I think that made us work in different directions and had us, working on different setups. But the aero side of it hasn't really shown a big effect. And then a lot of times, we talk about the tires and what Goodyear's done there. I tell people this a lot, that, a tire change, a different tire code, compound construction, those types of changes can affect our setups more than or as much as any aero change or maybe engine change. So the tire is a big factor in all this. And that's one thing that has stayed the same as we go back to Martinsville this year. So with that being said, we had probably our best year at Martinsville since I've been on the Cup side in 2015, with really a car capable of winning both races last year. Obviously, we weren't able to get it done, but I feel like we can definitely build off from those notes from last year and try to tune on it from there. I think our big challenge going into this weekend is trying to be better in qualifying. I mean, that's an area where we've been okay, but not where we want to be, and it's so important when it comes to pit selection. Obviously starting up front's important too. It's a long race. I think if you can stay out of trouble, that's not as big of effect as how pit road can have a outcome on the race. So trying to get that good pit stall. Obviously, one is quite an advantage at Martinsville, but there's still other stalls that are better than others, and that's very important to us as we look into qualifying.
Yeah, it's interesting. 12th and 11th for a qualifying effort doesn't seem all that bad, but at Martinsville, it's really hard to pass. One of the things that we hear a lot about the new downforce package is, yeah, the racing was okay, the finishes were fantastic, but really the race itself was kind of boring, and we were talking about having to set the entire race up for the end of the race. And one of our callers was asking, what do you guys do in the pit box during the race? We talk about strategies, another one of those words thrown away. Give an idea of what goes on during the race so that you set yourself up towards the end.
Well, yeah, it's a long a long process there to take all the information. We look back at history and those types of things, and then you just kind of watch to see how the race is playing out, understanding how many laps we can run on a full load of fuel, and then kind of looking at tire wear. And as you said, at some tracks we've seen different tire changes this year with having more wear or things like that. So you try to understand, are we pitting off of fuel, or are we going to pit off from tires because of handling? And as we look at all those things and see how the race is playing out, then it's understanding when the caution falls. Okay, are we gonna keep the track position? Is that going to be important to us, or are we at a place where the tires are worth so much that we're going to pit? And as I look at Martinsville, it seems fairly simple from a strategy standpoint, knowing that usually the tire wear is very high, especially the left rear tire, and that's where we talk about fall off and lose a lot of speed and being able to manage that left rear tire. So it almost seems a no-brainer that every time we see the caution, we're going to come to pit road. And I think for the most part that's true, but over the last couple of years, NASCAR has mandated the amount of tires we can use for the race. And we see that as well in the Xfinity series where they're very limited on tires and how that changes the strategy. But at places where tire wear is very high, Martinsville being one of those, you have to manage those tires as well. So we're trying to calculate how many laps do we need to run on each set of tires on average roughly to make sure when it comes down to the end to a late race restart or something, we have new tires if we need them. And I think Martinsville can fall into that category. And you'll see this weekend as well as you have in the past that there'll be times where you'll see some guys stay out and some guys pit. And that's just all because of how they want to manage their tires or how many sets they think they need to make it to the end of the race. And you'll see comers and goers, as we say, as you get deep into run, those guys that have stayed out, they just have no tire left. And we've seen guys that have been top 5 cars that have stayed out to keep a set of tires, but through that run, if it goes a full green run, they could be a lap down, and we've seen that happen. So it's very important to try to understand your tire and manage those as the race goes on.
That's Paul Wolfe. He's the crew chief on the number 2 Miller Lite Ford at Team Penske. They already have a win, one of 4 teams that have a win in the early part of the season. Paul, as always, man, just fantastic information, and we really appreciate your time.